Hey folks, Steve here with another Korean War video. We're going to be looking at turn 7 in this video. If I can get a move on and do less stuff on camera, maybe we'll even get more than one turn. I keep thinking I'm going to be able to maybe fit more than one turn into a video, and I just don't quite get there. Last turn we had Chinese intervention, a limited Chinese intervention at least, and 12 Chinese divisions have swarmed onto the map. They are getting into position. They weren't quite able to get into a position to actually fight UN forces, but this turn we expect that to occur, and the two superpowered attacks will likely be coming. Because they are the first attacks, the Chinese need to kind of think through how they want that to go. I mean, the very best option is going to be probably maybe we maneuver some units into place first. Let's say we activate 3 or 4 units, we move a few forward, and then the last one comes in and does the first attack. But it's going to be highly powerful and will likely hurt the allies quite a bit. That would be useful, and then we'd set up a second attack, just perfectly enough to again make use of the big swings. Ideally, what we would be doing is, if we're fortunate enough, just outright destroying an American division, or at least, destroyed in that it goes to the reconstitution track. It's not totally removed from the game, because ultimately UN units don't really leave the game. They just come back after being reconstituted over time. But any division we eliminate gives us a short-term tactical advantage, because the fewer divisions there are, the easier it is to destroy the next division and the next division, the next division, and then we could be marching and taking Seoul again. That is ideally what will happen for the communists. The UN wants to hold on, and if they can, even take areas like Wonsan while they can. Wonsan, I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Taking those areas if they can, find a good place where they can contest the Chinese intervention, basically, and hold a good position going into the rest of these turns. The thing that I think the UN player wants to try to do is just hold steady, not necessarily push for territory, but to win, operationally, reduce the Chinese if they can, and ride out this sort of midwinter Chinese intervention force initiative thing that is going to go on until the end of turn 8. So this whole turn and then all of turn 8 before this stops. A reminder, what that does is it gives the communist player initiative every action phase, regardless of supply points, and a few other sort of tactical advantages, and that the communists don't even really care about depots. So they're, I think the UN needs to hold steady. They need to concentrate on eliminating what Chinese units that they can, ride through this winter time period, and then hopefully be in a good position to deal with the second wave of Chinese divisions that will come down when full intervention occurs. And at this point, I just assume it is going to occur. Just about every action phase has a 50-50 chance, and it could happen. It could happen this turn, in which case the UN might have a much bigger problem on their hands than they might even think right now. I think if we're sizing up the forces on the map, I think the UN probably feels like they've got a pretty good chance at, rebuking the Chinese forces and kind of coming out on top. But if you add in all the other reinforcements, then we've got problems. I've gone ahead and done a few of the steps to start off the turn. We did the commitment stuff, and while there was a chance for the global tension level to go up by 1, I continue to roll low on those die rolls. So currently there is no global tension. We are at level 0 global tension, which means that the UN player is not losing any victory points so far, in terms of just, when we calculate that at the end of the turn. So we may see that change over time, but so far so good. The UN is going to be able to continue to rack up 22 to 23 victory points every turn if nothing else changes in terms of hex control in major ways. And I think that would be enough to get them what they need for victory. That would get them over the 158, 159 threshold that they need. But we'll see. So the game feels tight. Like we're not. I don't feel like anyone's certain of victory yet. It's really going to depend on how this next phase of the war goes, which is appropriate because that makes it a good game. So we did that. The UN air mission didn't really change much, except, and I'm just going to show it very, very quickly. There's a little bit of a glare. I moved where the air units are, so we still have winter, which means we can only have 8 planes on close air support. So that didn't change, but I did get things situated enough that when we this right now doesn't matter. The interdiction doesn't matter for supply because of the special initiative rules here, where there's no depots for the communists. But I did do this because I've been able to get these restricted road moves both here and here. And what that's basically going to do is it's going to reduce the ability for these guys to use the rail and the road to their full capability, um, to slow down the Chinese a little bit. I maybe could have put them in Pyeonggan-Pukto province, and maybe that would have been the better move. I'm not sure, given there's not that much space to traverse over here for roads, but the rails in particular make this a little bit harder for those units to get right up into the UN's face. And that's what I need to have happen. I need to slow them down a little bit so that the UN can better engage them, that they can't just get crept up on and hammered. We'll see them coming and be able to respond accordingly. Um, and then there's no more FEC enhancement. All those units have been enhanced. That's kind of over with. The amphibious capacity, we're still at 2. Our intervention level, mobilization level aren't going to change anymore. So we're always going to have 2 amphibious actions per turn. We might just use one of those this turn. And my thinking is, I looked at the rules around full Chinese intervention. If we go anywhere, basically here in Pyongnamdo, we go past Pyongan Namdo, is that how that's pronounced? Pyongan Namdo. If we go into here and above, or Hamyong Namdo and above, then we're pretty much just asking for full intervention right away. But Kangwon Pukto, where Wonsan is not in there, and I actually could do an amphibious invasion of Wonsan, get that production center, pick up some more victory points, and kind of have said, like, here's my, you got to fight me out of here, not just back here. You got to fight me out of here, and I've got enough units with some armor that will make it harder to get pushed out of there if we can get in there. So that's sort of the UN's one sort of open option, because we still have a division with infantry assets in the GHQ reserve box that we would use for that. So that's sort of, try to get in position, have our 2 sort of fronts, the east front over here, the western front over here, and just say this, these are the battle lines. Here we go, and see what happens. We never ended up going all the way up here in the north into the heavily mountainous region. So that's sort of where history has kind of veered off, or we veered off history rather, because we were slow to bounce back from the North Korean assault, and we just couldn't get up there in time. So kind of a shame for that, but fortunately this game does come with a scenario where you can set it up where the UN forces are up there and the Chinese intervene. So that's always an option if you want to do that. But of course I'm playing the campaign game, and that's just not the way it worked out for us this time. So it'll be interesting to try that at some point. So I'm going to go ahead and do the reinforcement stuff for the reinforcement stuff for the first action phase. The very first thing that I think we should look at is whether or not Chinese full intervention comes up, and so I do want to describe that quickly. Um, so, in order to do Chinese full intervention, we need to have either the UN player controlling Seoul and Busan and only Republic of Korea, or no UN units at all of any nationality uh, occupying a hex north of 38th parallel, and we've not amphibiously invaded any of those northern provinces. That's a condition one. And for condition one, we'd basically just roll a die and we would need an 8 or a 9. So a 20% chance of getting full intervention. Now it's that, that sort of situation that we had limited intervention come in because I just got that lucky with the die roll. I'm not going to assume it's going to be that lucky. But we're actually on condition two, which is at least one non-Republic of Korea UN unit occupies a hex north of 38th parallel. That is definitely true. We've crossed into Hwanghae and we're in Gangwon Pukto. So that is for sure the case. If condition two is in effect, the North Korea player's die roll. So we're gonna die roll. We're gonna modify it with some modifiers and consult the Chinese intervention table. We'd be looking at the full intervention table. In terms of modifiers, it's basically like it's a +5 to the die roll if we are in the most northern provinces on the map next to China, which is not the case. Then there's a +3 if we're in Pyongyang Namdo or Hamgyong Namdo, which is the next sort of strata of provinces, and that's not true. If we have a non-Republic of Korea UN unit in Gangwon Pukto or Hwanghae province, which is true. So there's a +1 to our die roll. Now, if we had done an amphibious assault against any of the northern provinces earlier in the game, a 2 would be added. And then there's a couple of cases where it's like, some of this is like automatic. If we had tried to, or maybe it's not automatic. Well, anyway, in this case for our game, I'm going to roll a die. We're going to add a 1 to it because we do have guys up here, which that was a choice I made. I'd rather fight a little bit north and maybe have to get pushed back than to be fighting near Seoul and lose Seoul, right? So here's the table here, full intervention. We need a 6 or more on the die. Again, we're going to add a +1, so basically a 5 or higher. And because the die is 0 to 4, is a 0 to 9 die, 0 to 4 means they don't intervene fully, 5 and above means they do. It's basically a 50-50 chance. So that was sort of the opportunity cost. If I had not ventured forward, it would only be a 20% chance, and I could maybe have just said, all right, let's tango with these existing 12 divisions. And I don't know. I mean, that's the thing with this game. Like, it's a valid choice. I could see trying to do it. Whether or not it's better, I really don't know until we see the rubber hits the road and we see how tough these Chinese units really are when they've got all their benefits and they've got the wave attacks and everything. So here's the die roll. I just figured I would do this before we do anything else because that would dramatically change how the rest of this activity goes. And yeah, that's full intervention. Rolled a 7. So okay, so let me go prepare the divisions and put them in my fake holding box. And I'll do the rest of the reinforcement and supply stuff. It's going to be pretty simple. The UN's going to have their depot in Seoul. There's a chance that North Koreans and South Koreans could each get a respective division. And then, that's really it. So I'll take care of that. We'll come back and show the situation before the operation phase gets underway. And in terms of the full reinforcements that are going to be coming, it's going to be basically the same as the limited. We're going to have a whole set of divisions. We're actually getting 15 divisions, which is even more than we got in limited, right? It's quite a bit. It's 15 because we didn't invade Formosa. And I did not do that because I wanted all these divisions to have a better tactical advantage rather than just have a bonus on global tension stuff. Um, so they're going to be kept on the holding box during the action phase of their placement. They're going to receive the same movement bonus as the limited ones, but they may not receive the strategic movement action. So these units, as they come onto the board, if they do a strategic move or whatever, which they'll probably need to just to get close to the front line, they're only going to use 12 movement points, not 16, which means um, it'll be this nice little stream of units, right, where we've got all these guys, and then these new reinforcements are going to get, up to around here probably, and so there'll be this sort of, true wave crashing into the UN forces. The question being, will the UN be able to face the onslaught? I think it's going to be pretty gnarly. And then once full intervention is achieved, we're going to receive some additional reinforcements on the first and second turn following intervention. So this would be on turns 8 and 9, that there'll be um, 3 more divisions each action phase on the turn 8, and then on turn 9 there's going to be 2 divisions in each action phase, which is just freaking gnarly, man. Just wow. Wow, that's a lot. But even those reinforcements still have to use operations to enter the map. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Um, ooh, wow. Okay. There's even more fun here, guys, and we're gonna have to. Okay, this is gonna be interesting. There's a full intervention attack bonus during the action phase in which full Chinese intervention occurs, and the immediately following action phase. So basically, the rest of this turn, the attack values of all Chinese units, not North Koreans, are multiplied by 1.5, rounding up. So we're not going to use the combat value modification chart. Geez. So there's a marker that I can use to denote this, but I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm just going to remember that during this whole turn, this action phase and the next one, all these Chinese units have a 1.5 bonus, but on that first 2 attack actions, they'll be doubled. So that's the key thing I need to remember. The first 2 are still doubled. Everything else will be times 1.5, rounding fractions up. Wow. Wow, man. That's pretty gnarly. That is pretty gnarly. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to get everything organized for that, and then we'll be back and kind of show the lay of the land. Okay, just to quickly show how things have gone, I've got the reinforcements set up over here on the turn track, along with the UN stuff that will show up eventually. And then over here, I have the 15 divisions just ready for me to place on the map as it becomes available. There's a little bit of a dead pile up here. I've got a separate dead pile on the right side of the table. Just got things kind of. I got a lot of table space to work with, and I will say, if you don't have a lot of table space to work with, this game might be a challenge for you. This map is quite big. I'm using 2 large tables that I had put together. I could probably gotten away with something a little bit smaller in terms of total table size, but just to get everything on a table is going to need a fairly. You're going to need a bigger table, I guess, is what I should say. Anyway, so the setup is all good there. So we're going to be able to get into the turn. The one thing I'll say is that one thing I say a lot of things, don't I, guys? There's a North Korean division as a reinforcement on San, so the North Koreans lucked out. But similarly, the South Koreans also got one, which is down there in Taegu, and we'll be trying to catch up to the front, much like this guy previously, and he's still got a little ways to go. So yeah, a little bit of reinforcement capability there on the two Korean factions, and then obviously the UN just didn't get anything really. So the U.S. forces and all the other allies, what's on the map is what they've got, and it is definitely scary. I'm looking at it like, okay, not sure how well this is going to go. So, in terms of the supply, the UN did roll well enough to get 2 supply points. I thought about using just one and having a limited because, okay, well, the communists are going to have initiative anyway, so why bother? And I realized I wanted an accelerated commitment so that I could get the 1.5 times on attack because in the chance that any of these Chinese units screw up an attack somehow and take some damage and end up weakened, I need the UN forces to be as strong as possible on a counterattack to bite them back and further reduce their strength. If we were just simply attacking with a 1 strength back, it's not going to be enough because all of these units will be operating with the 1.5 multiplier bonus, and I'm going to need the 1.5 attack bonus just to keep pace with the strength to keep going. So, a little bit of a gamble, right? I could bank a supply point, but I think I'm just going to use it, and the banking of supply points may be more valuable later. But I'm looking at the map, just awfully nervous at all these Chinese divisions. At first I was like, oh, this doesn't look so bad. With the limited set, maybe we could deal with that. We could win that out and then deal with the second wave. But now that the first wave is going to be followed very closely by the second wave of Chinese units, that's a lot of combat power that's just coming down the peninsula. And whether or not we have the power or strength to maintain a coherent line, I'm really nervous about. If we've got to divide up and break down our divisions just to cover a front so we can't be infiltrated, and those weakened combat powers can't stand up to the onslaught of the Chinese, that things are going to get ugly pretty quickly, and we're going to be heavily reliant on the UN air power to try to shave off the worst of what's coming. So it's interesting stuff, guys. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is get into the operations phase. Um, I'm not sure how much I'll show on camera. Ultimately, the game systems at this point have been illustrated, so I don't think it makes sense to show every single combat. I know some people really like that, want to see me move every single piece. We'll be here forever if I do that. So this is the exciting part of the game. I know it's exciting for me playing the game, but I can't show everything. So you guys may just have to accept that you're going to see the aftermath of some stuff because we'd be here forever otherwise. Um, but if you really like seeing all this, and maybe that's a good reason to get the game. So far, I'm having a good time with it. I will definitely say that. Definitely making me draw some comparisons with Korea Fire and Ice and how I feel about it. But I've definitely warmed up on this quite a bit as I've been playing it. All right, I will show the aftermath of the action phase here very shortly. Okay, here we are after the first action phase, and things did not go as well for the Chinese as I thought they were going to. But I think it's a function of a couple of things. In the historical situation, or if you're playing one of the scenarios later, the later starting scenarios where the UN forces are deep in the mountains of northern Korea, that first impulse or first action phase where you get the doubling of the attacks and then the general oomph of having 1.5 multiplier on everything matters a whole lot more when you're right next to folks, and that action phase has you, those first couple of action phases has you right next to the enemy, and you can do a lot more damage because they're spread out. In our situation, for better or for worse, like, we didn't get as far, but we are starting farther away from where the Chinese start. And so What ended up happening was that when it was the communist turn and I rolled to activate, even though they're rolling on their very best chart to activate many units frequently, I rolled low every time until the only things left to activate were all the reinforcing Chinese divisions after the UN had basically gone already, and had used up all their units. And so, like, we had one activation, we had 4 units. I had surged a couple of these divisions here against the line that was actually back here a hex or two, surged ahead and tried to focus fire on sort of the leading division with the hope that enough firepower could really smash that UN division, the US division, and you know start things off with a bang and then put the rest of these units under threat. But I think I grossly miscalculated what happens when you have an offensive like that only does okay, and then the weakness that you're like, it feels like in this combat system, because once you're done acting, you fatigue, and you're weaker when you're fatigued. It just makes things really like there is a defender advantage, sort of, where even if I had set it up that the defender wouldn't defend in multiple hexes, it was all going to be in one hex, and all that concentrated firepower offset by air power and armor bonuses, because, like, a lot of these divisions have armor with them, and the Chinese do not have any. That sort of combined arms bonuses, again, modifiers are king. They rolled this big, first opening attack that was supposed to be doubled, and like everything was going to go really great, and I ended up only causing a DR1. So one division here is at a replacement two step, two replacement, however you want to look at it, a two-step division. They lost one step, they had a retreat, and then on almost the very next die roll, the UN forces rolled high enough to activate 3 units. They then proceeded to do, good combined hex supporting attacks, and basically over the course of several activations, you see there's a couple of Chinese divisions that were reduced down to one step because they received DR2s. And then I think we had somewhere one division completely taken out entirely. And so the UN has actually been able to advance a little bit here and create a sort of perimeter line there. Um, it almost kind of reminds me of like I don't know, a battle game where you have your guys lined up hex to hex here. Like, there's not a true consistent line across the whole thing, but out in that open terrain where the armor is most advantageous, the UN can spread out a little bit and just force the Chinese to have to try to maneuver around them. But I mean, you can see after all the reinforcements came onto the board, like, they do have a lot. And this is almost everything. The only things that are not here yet are the reinforcements that will come in over the next couple of turns. But like, this is the Chinese army in this game. Like, it is. They're not very spread out, right? Um, they don't divide up into regiments, so these divisions are sizable, and there's quite a few of them. But I don't know how to look at it. It's still a lot of units, especially we've got like 3 here, and then we've got this wedge shape and a couple other scattered units. Like, it is a lot. It's a lot of divisions, no joke. When you really look at this defensive line here, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 divisions there, and then there's one division out in the middle, a regiment here, and 2 divisions over here. Like, just straight up, there's twice as many divisions right here that can be aligned against that, that 6. The difference is that 6 do have armor assets, and the air can kind of keep things dicey. But I think there's enough Chinese that they could potentially come down, infiltrate around, outflank these guys, and then maybe that's the ticket to eliminating them. So it may really come down to the die rolls, like how many units activate, how many units can get away, or restructure the line, or do Zoc protection, so that we don't have this swarm. It's still pretty good odds that the Chinese can activate 4 units in a go, which means they could potentially do these big envelopments if they can get enough things going their way. So, first round goes to the UN. They certainly, dealt more steps than they received this action round, but this action phase. But the next one's probably going to be the one where the where the true proof in the pudding is going to start to come into play, depending on where these guys get to. So that'll be interesting. The other thing is we tried to take Wonsan with these two divisions, and unfortunately we got some no results. Or maybe we got a retreat, and then I had these guys take the retreat option. They had the benefit of being in a improved defenses marker, which they'll eventually put up to fortified, and they just couldn't quite get into it. The one thing I think I screwed up, and it's way too late now, for all of these combats, it's sort of an advantage to the communist player. I think I accidentally gave all of them 1.5 defense strength, but it is actually supposed to be just their attack values. So I maybe have given um, the communists a little bit of a boost by giving them extra defense factors. I can't remember for sure if I did that for everybody, because it's only attack value bonuses. They still use their printed values, which is still good. So I'm a little worried I kind of screwed that up. Maybe the communists should have gotten beat. Maybe this hex should have been taken. But I can't remember now for sure. But I have a general feeling like I gave everybody 1.5 on defense on the communists when I should not have done that. It's only on attack. So that's kind of my bad. I'm not sure how I can rectify that. So I don't know. If we end up losing as the UN, you can maybe blame that on a little bit of a cheat for the communists. The Chinese did move 2 divisions over here. They didn't get here in time to do combats, but they are there to help protect the production center and to start contesting that space. Though again, the UN, and just in terms of pure combat factors, will tend to have the advantage with the armor, at least until some of these other divisions can make it down here. So I think it is a matter of, what we're dealing with is just a matter of time, where the UN has to outlast the bonuses through the next action phase, and the next big attack. Whenever we've only attacked once as the Chinese, we still get one more. That will be super powered, and then the rest of these guys will still have their bonus. And then once that is done, all these Chinese units will basically be operating, their big surprise momentum will be gone, and we'll be dealing with printed factors through the end of turn 8. So, there's definitely an onrush, but again, I think the big thing is, because we weren't up in the mountains to be surprised, we're a little bit better situated to engage the Chinese, unit on unit, and tactically planned battles rather than scrambling to form something coherent. We're lucking out in the fact that our tension has been low all game up to this point. We haven't lost any victory points for that reason, so we're really kind of being advantaged for that. But now we are going to be dealing with a +1 to the tension die roll because of full Chinese intervention. So it's kind of be a little bit of a bummer. That might start to jack up the tension. Okay, so that's sort of the summary of action phase 1. A lot of stuff going on. I'm going to go ahead and do I'm going to do the prep work for the second action phase. And maybe what I'll do, I don't think there's any point in me showing you the depot placement stuff, because there's really only one thing to do, and that's to roll the depot for the UN. So I'll talk about the results of that. We're very likely either going to get limited or maybe accelerated commitment. It's just going to depend on that die roll. But any of that is enough, and I will say that my idea to do the accelerated, to have a 1.5 bonus on the UN units, was actually really helpful. Maybe offset by the fact that I gave the 1.5 bonus to the Chinese on defense, but without that bonus, I wouldn't have been able to hit back as hard as I did. So if we can get 2 supply points in this next action phase of the UN, we're definitely going to keep the accelerated commitment up, because we just need it to stay competitive and to be able to hit these Chinese units before they can hit us, essentially. Um, okay, so we'll be back after the second action phase has been completed. Okay, here we are after the second action phase, and again, I would generally say the UN has had the better action phase. We still couldn't quite make all the effectiveness of our attack bonuses the communists. The problem, we were just like, the Allies were back here, and we sort of tried to edge out a couple of units to draw the UN into coming closer so that we can spring the rest of our units forward for an attack, but it never quite manifested enough that we got a good combat result. We did end up beating back the replacement 2 division down to a replacement 1 and forced him back, and the UN is trying to send him sort of back into safeties to try to recover, but it's going to take a while to get there. The rest of the UN units did kind of move around, maneuvered. They eliminated, or they weakened some divisions. They even eliminated some divisions in some ways, or in some ways, yeah. We managed to score some good rolls and push guys back, but I think it's the sheer weight of numbers that's going to start to become a greater problem. And the fact that we're fighting out in this sort of open space is a problem. The UN may have been tempted too much, like that ability to say, "Ooh, let me grab you, let me try to eliminate you. That's one less division I have to worry about," is drawing them into a position where they're not, they can't keep fighting like this because they're just going to get outmaneuvered and surrounded due to numbers. So I may have made a mistake, and in fact, there's a little bit of some some real danger that could occur here, where this could turn into a pocket if these guys go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and this guy comes down this way. Like, I actually, this could get, it's going well, but it could go disastrously bad for the UN just because of positioning. And I maybe made some mistakes that are going to be, could be bad. It's really going to depend on, will the communists go first in the next turn with a high roll or a low roll? If they go first and they only can move like 1 unit, and then the Allies move 3, then they're probably okay. If it's, hey, the communists can activate 4 units, then we could be in some really deep trouble as the UN. And in this sort of main sector where the armor is certainly helping, but the wide open spaces are not, and they really need to think about pulling back. I should have pulled back, is what I should have done. I should have just pulled back. We'll see what happens. Over here, there's a little bit of a maneuver action where this guy's now stuck in Zox. But again, that desire to eliminate units has created some holes in the UN line that could be exploited. You've got a whole cluster of guys here around Wonsan. The Allies dug in a little bit after an attempted attack to take Wonsan failed. And so you can see, like, there's just a lot of divisions there, and still 3 more to end with the fray. So I think generally speaking, like, it's good. Every step loss we deal to the Chinese is one they're not going to get back. But there's still so many, and we still have what, 10 more, 11 more divisions that are going to come in as replacements over the next couple of turns. Like, yeah, we probably need to pull back somewhere. We should set up a new line and hope for the best on it. I think the attempts to attack are going to actually be bad for us in the long run. So much for that, I guess. I mean, that, it is what it is. So I played through. I also counted up the victory points. We gained another 23 victory points, which is very good for the Allies. They're now sitting at 89. So you figure, they can get a couple more turns of this, then they're going to be in good shape for victory, assuming they don't lose too many. But it's still early to tell yet, and we could see some disasters start to come up over time here. I think the main thing is, again, the UN needs to hold out until the end of the initiative push, which is going to be all of turn 8, the whole next turn. The North Koreans and the Chinese communists still have initiative. The UN must survive to get ahead of that, and then once they do, it'll be a little bit easier, and the activation rate of the Chinese communists will go down, and then the supply will matter again. So it's like we're still in this really tough position, and I can feel it feels like it still could go hard either way, just depending on how these next maneuvers go. I mean, it's going to be that close, I think, of a thing. So there you go, guys. 89 victory points on the board. We are going to be entering January 1951, or I guess this ends 1950. We're going into 51 with just 5 more turns left in the game, but still a lot of action. The Chinese now fully involved in the war, coming down still with many units to fend off and fight, and we'll see how it goes from there. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Keep on gaming. See you in the next one.